Hello everyone, and welcome to Student Economist, where choosing to spend your time here is infinitely better than the opportunity cost. So right before us today we have a CAPE examination, Paper 1, Economics Unit 1, 2022. And with this Paper 1, it's the first of a series where we're going to try and hone in on as much marks as we can for this Paper 1 in order to get your desired grade. I do hope that your paper 2 was as fruitful as it should be in order to get your desired grade. But this is where we can do the last lap of it. So let's begin, shall we, from question 1. Remember that, as customary, the solutions are on the page, so you just have to follow along and just listen to the reasoning for each question. So, question 1 says, the use of land to build hospitals reduces the amount of land available for factory construction. This illustrates the concept of scarcity. Remember, scarcity refers to the inequality that exists between the unlimited human desire, and unlimited human desire is really shown in the fact that you want to build hospitals, but you also want to build factories. So that desire to utilize the resources, and these resources are finite, as you can see by the use of land. Land is a finite resource. You're unable to satisfy everything because there are infinite possibilities because of human desire. Okay, moving on. 2. Consumer surplus may be defined as C, the difference between total utility and total spending. 3. As the price of good X increased from $5 to $11, the quantity supplied increased from 700 to 820. What is the value of the price elasticity of supply? So, okay, remember that price elasticity of supply refers to the calculation what you have to do where it's the percentage change in quantity supplied over the percentage change in price. And remember, price elasticity of supply, with supply, there's a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied, so it would possess a positive coefficient. Furthermore, to calculate each percentage change, you have to do new minus old over old times 100. So here for quantity supplied, we have 820 minus 700 over 700 times 100. And when you calculate all of that, you get 17. And then same thing for price, the new price, which is 11, minus the old 5 over 5 times 100, get 120%. When you put the 17% over the 120%, you get 0.14, and that would be A. 4. If the price elasticity of demand for cigarettes is negative 0.5, how might an increase in the price of cigarettes impact the total revenue of a firm selling this product? So it is important to note for goods that do possess a PED which is less than 1, that really indicates that there is an inelastic demand. And we can see that through the fact that the good that we're talking about in this question is cigarettes. Cigarettes are habit forming addictive goods, and they tend to have inelastic demand because the consumer is addicted to the good and they're unable to forego it no matter how much the price increases. So remember now, for price inelasticity, we're looking at the fact that the percentage change in price is proportionately much greater than the percentage change in quantity demanded. So even though the price of the good may increase by say 20%, the amount of consumers who will decide not to purchase the good would only be like 5%. So the increase in the price is proportionately greater than the decrease in quantity demanded. And that is how it would lead to an increase in total revenue, because there's a higher increase in the price and not enough people foregoing the good for the revenue to actually decrease. So they're able to still garner more revenue with a higher price. And that's why the answer would be A. Moving on to 5. Which of the following activities results in an external cost? So external cost, that's very similar to negative externalities. Negative externalities refers to any spillover cost incurred by the third party, unrelated third party. And as you can see right here, B is an external cost. Individuals place litter at the side of the road. So when individuals place litter at the side of the road, that will lead to other adverse impacts on the third party. Like, for example, it leads to a decrease in overall health because the environments aren't clean, and then it could possibly lead to more backlogs at the hospitals, more mortality, higher mortality rates, and so on and so forth. So you can see that B really is an external cost, while the other ones are more so external benefits. They lead to positive externalities. Let's move on to 6. 6 is an increase in the price of yam is most likely to. So right here we see that in 6 there's a demand curve. So we're talking about the relationship between price and quantity demanded. So as an increase, we can see the increase in price from 20 to 30, right? From X to Y. It would lead to a movement along the curve, because this would be a contractionary movement along the demand curve, because remember there's an inverse relationship as per the law of demand between price and quantity demanded. So as the price increases from 20 to 30, as going from X to Y, the quantity demanded decreases from 2 units to 1 unit, and that is why there's a movement from point X to Y, because you're decreasing the amount of quantity demanded while increasing the price. So the answer is D. Okay, let's move on to 7. So total social cost of cutting trees for lumber and firewood produces D. Rising chance of flooding plus the private cost of cutting down trees. So remember, social cost refers to the summation of private costs plus external costs. I have it right here. SC is equal to PC plus EC. So any response that gives you the external cost, flooding, and then it gives you the private cost of cutting the trees, that would be your answer. Okay, item 3, it says in which stage should production operate? And which stage of production should the firm operate? Answer is C. C is actually where the second, where you'd have this is where you have the stage 2 of production, where essentially the firm is able to more efficiently utilize its resources and utilize it to the maximum. As you see right here, this is where total product is at its maximum, and also I believe marginal product is at its minimum. So you're able to get as much production as possible in the second stage. In the earlier stage, the resources are being underutilized. That's stage 1, and in the later stage, stage 3, resources are being overutilized, in the sense that it leads to over specialization and um, overall just a diseconomy of scale of sorts. So C to D would be where the resources are being overutilized and not being used properly, inefficiently. All right, let's move on. Okay, 9. Which of the following which segment of the curves represents the short run supply curve? So the short run supply curve is from E to H. 10. Which of the following measures is an example of a price ceiling? Price ceiling is A, rent control. We know it can't be a minimum wage. Minimum wage is a price floor. Tax on the market isn't necessarily a price floor or a ceiling, because that shifts the supply curve to the left. And farm price support, that's actually some form of a subsidy, and subsidy would shift the supply curve to the right. So best answer is rent controls, price ceiling. Again, we have another price elasticity of supply question. It says when the cost of renting an apartment is $650 per month, 10,000 units are rented. When the price increases by 7%, the quantity supplied increases by 26%. What is the price elasticity of supply? So with this same question, you can obviously use a bit of process of elimination, in the sense that the change in quantity supplied which is on top. Let me draw out the formula. Say price elasticity of supply is equal to, again, percentage change in quantity supplied over the percentage change in price. So if the quantity supplied, which is 20%, and the price is 7%, if there is a much greater if the quantity supplied is greater than the price, you would end up with actually a positive number. So when you see all these other options basically giving you inelastic price elasticity of supplies, you can already tell that these cannot be, A to C cannot be the answer. But if you do your calculations as well, you'd end up with, as I did over here, 3.33 and 5/7. But then if you change that to a decimal, you would get 7.1. So yeah, the answer is D, and just through process of elimination, you can see that the answer is D. Item 12 says, what is the most likely reason for a fall in the price from OP1 to OP2? So on this graph, we see that there's a shift from S0 to S1, and obviously that shift is leftward, so that would be an increase in supply B. Okay, let's go to 13. 13 says, if a consumer obtains a good without having to sacrifice the consumption of another, this means that A, the opportunity cost of the good is 0. So again, opportunity cost refers to the value of the next best alternative foregone. So if there is no next best alternative, there is no opportunity cost. So simple as that, it would be 0. 14. Using the formula for point elasticity, calculate the cross elasticity of demand between chicken and beef if the price of the chicken increases from $20 to $25. So right here we can already see that chicken and beef are actually substitutes. So we know that the sign that goes before is actually gonna be a plus sign. And furthermore, we added some shorthand here, but remember we do our new minus old over old, and we end up with, for price we end up getting 25%, and for quantity demanded you end up getting 200%. For this, you put the 200% change in quantity demanded for beef, and then you put that over the 25% change in price for chicken, and then the 200 over the 25 will give you 8. Okay, moving on. Which of the following statements is true if good X is an inferior good? Remember, inferior goods are the opposite of normal goods. Normal goods have a positive relationship between quantity demanded and changes in income, and inversely, inferior goods have a negative or inverse relationship between the the consumer income, and quantity demanded for a certain good. So the answer would be D. Income elasticity of demand is negative. 16 now, we have a bit of a instance to read before. It says, Mumu Limited is a part of the milk industry, where there are a few large firms, each of which can control its own price, and where there is high barriers to entry and exit. Buzz operates in the honey industry, where there are hundreds of price-taking firms, which all produce an identical product. Which of the following correctly classifies the market structure of each industry? So, for the milk industry for Mumu, we see that Mumu is actually an oligopoly, and it's kind of given away from the fact that it says a few large firms. Oligopolies is the only market structure which has a few large firms who are interdependent, and they also are price setters because they tend to have what we call in economics sticky prices or price rigidity, and there are high barriers to entry, of course, because they need to maintain their dominance as the few large firms. Additionally, for Buzz now, there is there are hundreds of price-taking firms. So we see that hundreds really shows that mm, um, it shows that it's really perfect competition, because perfect competition is a market structure which does have many buyers, and price taking as well shows that it is indicative of the perfect competition, because perfect competition also take their price from the industry. So from the supply and demand equilibrium of the industry, the firms under perfect competition take that price. And additionally, they do produce a homogeneous good, uh, identical product. So that shows that honey is perfect competition. So the answer is C for 16. 17. A firm that has achieved Pareto efficiency produces goods B and allocates resources efficiently. So the thing with Pareto efficiency, it occurs when there's a coexistence or coincidence of both productive and allocative efficiency. And really with Pareto efficiency, we're more so speaking towards the fact that um, there's a perfect allocation of resources where essentially no one can be left worse off if with this perfect allocation. If there's any slight increase or under allocation of resources to anybody, that would leave people worse off, and that would mean that they would not be in Pareto efficiency. So really, one of the core concepts about Pareto efficiency is about allocation, and that's basically what B shows. A is a close answer where it says in the quantities consumers want, but consumers could want way more than what is truly allocatively or productively efficient, because they could want a certain amount, but it would cause the firm to have a higher cost and produce at a higher cost, which would not be productively efficient. Moving on, 18. Positive economic profit is C, where average revenue is greater than average cost. Okay. Okay, 19, it says based on the Herfindahl-Hirschman index for the data table above, the market can be described as, okay, so right here we make sure that we get our market shares and essentially square all of them and add them up, and we end up with 3,308. And additionally, we interpret that as being highly concentrated because from the Baha book it says that the once the HHI for a certain industry is greater than 1,800, it is highly concentrated. So C is asked what's the four firm concentration ratio. So the four firms would be the four strongest firms in the market. So that would be firm 1, firm 2, firm 3, and 4. So they have the greatest amount of shares. So it would be 50 plus 25 plus 10 plus 10. That would give you 95, which is D. Which of the following statements is true? That would be D. Output Q is efficient because that's where social marginal benefit is equal to social marginal cost. This is true because this is the point where society wants their output. This is what they actually want, and there would be no welfare loss there. 22. Which of the following situations represents a negative externality? This is A, where private cost is less than social cost. So again, you have to kind of rationalize through some type of calculation to say that essentially the external costs, when the external costs, remember, okay, let's go about it. So social cost is equal to private cost plus external costs. Transposing that formula, we see that external cost is equal to social cost minus private cost. So let's put some figures to it. If it says private cost is less than social cost, so let's give a private cost figure of 4, and we give social cost a figure of 6. So when the social cost is greater than the private cost, we end up with external cost. There is some external cost happening because in the case of where, for example, we see that external cost, where we see for example private cost is actually greater than social cost, there is no actual external cost. It's negative. So that would not really make any sense So external costs have to take place where private cost is less than social cost. Okay, moving on. So 23 says, which of the following types of goods can be provided by the market but are usually subsidized or provided by the government in order to increase social benefits? These are merit goods. Merit goods, as we said before, merit goods are underproduced and underconsumed, and it often is subsidized in order to get more of those positive externalities. 24 says the term deadweight loss can be best described as D, a decrease in the net welfare of society. Yeah. Tia and Tamara decided to watch a movie at the cinema. Into which following categories can the movie be classified? And it be excludable and rival. Excludable in the sense that they use the cost of the ticket to actually um, allow for people. It's what they use as the discriminating thing to say you are allowed to watch and you're not allowed to watch, paying for the movie. And secondly, it's rival in the sense that the more people buy, the more seats are being taken up in the movie theater, and less people can consume it as more people buy up more seats. 26. If the cost of providing a good to additional person is zero, then the good is classified as non-excludable, right? So this goes back to the fact that it's zero priced. All right. So 27 says if there were no healthcare insurance available, what would be the equilibrium price and quantity available for healthcare? That would be A, price 2 and quantity 2. 28 says John purchased an auto insurance policy. 1 week later, he carelessly drove his car into a wall. This scenario is an example of a moral hazard. So, moral hazard is essentially when people are more reckless due to the fact that they have purchased some type of collateral or some type of safeguarding policy. So, in this case, it's insurance. So, it's the economic occurrence of people being more reckless as a result of purchasing things like insurance. Okay. 29 says Flintstone Quarry Limited is aware of the negative environmental impacts of its quarrying activities in Bedrock Hills. Therefore, the company organizes an annual reforestation drive and maintains a small park and recreation grounds for the for the for the community of Bedrock Hills. This scenario represents an example of correcting market failure via the adoption of D, corporate social responsibility. 30. On which of the following assumptions is perfect competition based? This is B, a large number of firms. And this is so as it really can't be A because they don't have control over price. They are price takers. C says large number of big firms. No, there's a large number of firms, but there isn't. They aren't big firms. They're small. They don't have a lot of market share. And D says small number of individual firms, which is not true. There's many buyers in the perfect competition. 31 says a shift in the demand curve from DD to D1 will result in a decrease in economic rent. The demand for a factor production is a derived demand. This means that the demand for the factor comes from the D, demand for the product that the factor makes. Right? Alright. And that's the case in like the steel industry where you don't necessarily buy steel just for buying steel. You use steel because you want to manipulate it into whatever you want to use it. Maybe you buy steel in order to make metallurgic products, but you don't buy steel just for use by itself. You use it for the product that you can get from it. 33. Which of the following terms describes the relationship between factor rewards and cost of production? That's a positive relationship because the more labor you buy or you have to get, the more wages have to be paid out. The more land you buy, the more rent. The more um, capital you use, the more interest, and the more enterprise, the more profit. You know, so We move on. 34. Which of the following factors would have most likely caused a shift above? So the MRP is really just a graph that shows the demand for that certain labor. And one, with the rise in worker productivity, you'd see that the firm would demand more of the good because demand more labor because there's higher productivity, so they'd be able to get more production. Additionally, you would say three as well because increasing the price of the final good would cause for the firm to want to produce more of the good, therefore requiring more labor. So that's why we would be okay. 35. Which of the following factors is likely to cause an increase in the wage rate of construction workers? Okay, this would end up being A, an increase in the market price of housing. This is really so because um, the the housing would be considered what you call that now, a physiological need or a basic need of the construction workers, and an increase in the price of that would cause for the workers to demand more income in order to offset that increase in um, housing prices. 36. The demand for teachers is based on the demand for educational services. Which of the following types of demand does this describe? This is derived demand. Again, same thing with the steel example given before, just switch with teachers. 37. Which of the following represents the labor supply? That's B, from A to B. Right. Going into 38. When examining the Lorentz curve, a Gini coefficient of 100% is regarded as C, and total inequality of income distribution. And 39 says a trade union successfully bargains for a wage increase in an imperfectly competitive labor market. What is the most likely consequence of this action in the labor market? That would be D, a decrease in the quantity of labor demanded. This is really so because the firm, the result of industrial action through collective bargaining will result in an increase in wage rate. But remember, the firm is essentially trying to minimize costs as much as possible. And when you increase wages, that is actually a major cost to the firm. And what the firm will do is reduce their demand for labor. And this is what we see in D, and it actually results in real wage unemployment as the firm is unable to cover fully the increase in wages. So it would be a decrease in the demand for labor. And we see it in this graph right here that I've drawn. This is how much labor the firm is demanding, and this is how much labor is being offered up to the labor force. So as you can see, the firm they overall decrease the quantity demanded because they used to demand this amount right here at equilibrium, and now they demand this at Q1. So there's a decrease in quantity demanded. Which of the following situations best describes the situation in which people in an economy cannot afford basic goods or services? This is absolute poverty, C. Which of the following factors is not likely to cause a shift in the supply curve for labor? A, cost of labor. Cost of labor would more so cause expansionary or contractionary movement along the supply curve. 42. Say John and Mary are both engineers who have similar qualifications and work experience. John earns $20,000 per month working for an offshore oil company, while Mary earns 15,000 per month in a power generation plant. Which of the following factors best describes the disparity in wages between John and Mary? C. John earns more as he's being compensated for greater risk and the more unpleasant conditions of his job. So as you can see, he's working offshore and Mary's working in a power plant. So obviously this would lead to what you call a compensating wage differential, or what they call an equalizing difference. So he'd be paid more for the fact that his working conditions are unpleasant. Okay, 43. Mr. and Mrs. Smith can offer to send their children to school, pay their groceries, and pay their rent. However, they cannot afford to save or buy a car. This situation is an example of C, relative poverty. So this is where mm, the the consumer is able to buy certain things, but this would still be considered below the average income level of their certain nation. So in this case, maybe in this nation, the average income level can actually buy a car, but to Mr. and Miss Smith, they can afford to get their basic needs, but they aren't able to get the car. So this would be relative poverty. Which of the following government policies is least likely to reduce poverty? It would be A, an implementation of regressive tax system. Really and truly, to reduce poverty, you need a progressive tax system. So they actually put the inverse of what the what policy is needed to reduce. All right, at 25, they say 45. Sorry, John and Jim work for a construction company that builds high-rise building. The John painted the interior walls of the house and was paid $12 per hour. Jim painted the exterior walls and was paid 18. The difference in pay between the two workers may be accounted for by a D, well, a C, compensating wage differential. And just like that, we have reached the end of this MCQ. I do hope you have learned something from this. Always remember that the price to learn is zero, so raise the demand for excellence.